SKOL Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fan, listen up. The team just received an irresistible trade pitch for a talented wide receiver, and this season, every single detail matters. At the same time, a Viking starter is being pointed out as a major cut candidate. There is a real battle for control of the offense, and a franchise legend just made a statement that puts pressure on everything. Stay with me, because this is about to heat up fast, and it only gets bigger from here. There is a move here that, at first glance, looks like just another attempt to fill out the roster, but when you connect the dots, it starts to carry a different kind of weight. Because it is not just about bringing someone into the offense, it is about the type of piece this team still has not found after losing their WR3 at the start of free agency. The Vikings tried simpler paths. They brought in available names, explored internal options, signed several undrafted players to compete for a spot. But in practice, it still has not solved the issue, and anyone watching closely can see it quickly. There's a lack of consistency in that third option. There is a lack of someone who truly changes how defenses view this offense. And in a division where every possession can swing a game, that matters. That is where something that's been gaining traction behind the scenes starts to show up. A possible trade, and not just any name. Now, the name that has started to show up in these conversations is Brandon Aiyuk, and this is where things get more interesting, because it is not simply go get talent. There is a complicated situation involving him and his current team. Basically, it has turned into a standoff. The team wants to move him. The player is not expected to stay, but at the same time, nothing is moving, and that raises a direct question: is it worth the risk? Because on the field, we know what he can deliver. At his best, he plays like a high-level WR2, at times even flirting with WR1 upside. The fit in Minnesota would make sense, especially given the similarities in offensive systems. But off the field, that is where the concern starts. Recent reports point to communication issues, teams trying to reach him and not getting responses, conversations breaking down, and inside any NFL locker room that raises immediate red flags. So you end up with that classic dilemma, talent versus potential headache. And that is never a small call for a team trying to find its rhythm, because in theory the cost would be low. There is talk of a 6th-round pick, in other words, controlled financial risk. But the impact inside the locker room, that is not so easy to measure. One bad locker room fit can change more than a depth chart. So let me ask you directly, would you take that gamble right now? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this decision is not simple. The upside is huge, but the risk comes with it. And the next part of this whole thing hits even closer to home, because there is a current player on this roster who might not survive this new reality. What is your take on Brandon Aiyuk possibly heading to the Vikings? Jump into the comments and subscribe to the channel. Your voice matters here, especially on a move that could split the fan base fast. There is a player on this roster who, not too long ago, looked like he had found his place. Not a star, but not just a background piece either. He was contributing, getting snaps, trying to establish himself. But in the NFL, that kind of position is the most dangerous one there is, because it only takes a small shift for everything to flip upside down. And that is exactly what started happening after the draft. The Vikings secondary already had established names, already had reliable pieces, and even so, the team decided to invest another important pick at the position. That alone sends a clear message. Competition did not just increase, it became intense. And when a team drafts your position, everybody in that room feels it right away. Now, the name right in the middle of that pressure is Theo Jackson. If you look strictly at the numbers, you could argue for keeping him. He had opportunities in 2025, started games, produced in certain stretches, showed effort, physical presence, even made a few impactful plays here and there. Nothing spectacular, but far from useless. But the issue is not the past, it is what is happening now, because he had already lost ground before. He was demoted during the season, came back in a few games, but never fully regained that trust. And once a player enters that cycle, it is hard to break out of it. Then comes the draft. Then comes a rookie with higher pedigree. Then you already have other names competing for snaps. And just like that, the entire picture changes. Right now, if you mentally build the depth chart, you start to see him slipping, and slipping fast. There are players ahead of him. There are players arriving. There are players who finished the season strong, and all of that pushes him into a very uncomfortable zone. The zone where a player needs a perfect training camp just to secure a roster spot. And in the NFL, that is almost a silent sentence, because it is not just about playing well. It is about convincing the coaching staff, fitting into special teams, showing value in multiple roles. And even then, sometimes it is not enough. That's the part fans don't always see until cutdown day hits. And this is where versatility becomes critical. Early in his career, special teams kept him alive on the roster. That was his safety net. But now, with more options in the group, even that is being questioned. So the question shifts from can he play to is he still needed? And that is the harshest question in an NFL roster, because sometimes a player has the level, has the effort, but simply no longer fits the current plan. And looking at the situation now, there is a real path where he becomes the fourth option, or even lower. And once it gets to that point, the line between staying and being cut becomes extremely thin. And this is where the pressure starts to stack, because what comes next is not about someone who might be leaving. It is about someone who has not even decided if he is coming back. And that changes everything in this defense. Now the situation gets more delicate, because this is not about performance. It is not about losing snaps. It is about a personal decision. And when it reaches that point, the entire team is left waiting on something that could change everything at any moment. The Vikings are in the middle of offseason preparation, organized workouts, minicamp approaching, pieces trying to fit together. But there is one specific piece that nobody knows will be there when the season starts. And that carries more weight than it seems, because we are not talking about just any player. We are talking about leadership, game intelligence, someone who for years has been the brain of this secondary. Now the name at the center of this uncertainty is Harrison Smith. And the question is not whether he can still play. That was answered last season. Even at his age, he showed there is still plenty left in the tank. He still understands the game at a high level. He still produces. The issue is different. He has not decided whether he wants to go through another full NFL season. And that completely changes the team's planning, because while he has not made a decision, the Vikings have to operate as if he will not return. They cannot wait forever. They cannot build a roster around uncertainty. And that has been made clear in recent comments from people close to the situation. The approach is simple. Move forward. If he comes back, great. That becomes a bonus. But the team cannot be held hostage by that decision. And honestly, that makes sense. Think about it. If he chooses to show up right before week 1, for example, that works great for the player. Rested body, protected contract, direct entry into the roster. But for the team, that is last-minute adjustment. That is rushed integration. That is changing a rotation that was already set. And that's never ideal, especially for a defense that needs communication locked in early on. At the same time, there is total respect. And that is also fair. Not everyone builds the kind of career he has built within a single franchise. So you end up with this strange balance. On one side, the organization trying to plan ahead. On the other, a legendary veteran deciding his future on his own timeline. And meanwhile, the other players at the position are practicing, competing, trying to prove they can take over that role. That is where the tension gets real. But replacing that kind of presence is not easy. Replacing football IQ, even harder. So you are left in this uncertain environment, a group trying to establish itself, a spot that may or may not open, and an impact that, depending on the final decision, can completely change the level of this defense. And right when the defense already has questions, the conversation shifts to the other side of the ball, where one battle could redefine the entire Vikings offense. Now the conversation shifts to the other side of the ball. And here, things escalate quickly, because when it comes to quarterbacks, there is no middle ground. You either solve it, or it becomes a major problem during the season. The Vikings entered this offseason with a clear idea: bring competition, create internal pressure. But when you put more than one name fighting for that job, you also create a scenario where every practice starts to feel like a final decision. And that has already begun. Now the names at the center of this battle are J.J. McCarthy and Kyler Murray. On one side, you have a young quarterback, still trying to prove he can be the future of the franchise. On the other, a former #1 overall pick, with experience, with a resume, and also with a lot to prove after what has happened in recent years. And here is a point that does not get discussed enough. This is not just talent versus talent. It is mindset versus pressure. Because JJ needs to show up differently. He needs real improvement. Cleaner mechanics, faster reads, better touch on his throws. It is no longer about potential. It is about execution. And in this league, potential only buys you time until the next guy walks in. And there are voices around the league saying exactly that, including John Beck, who understands quarterback development, making it clear: block out the noise. Focus on your own game. Do not get caught up in constant comparisons. But that is easier said than done. Doing that on the field with cameras on you, fan pressure building, and an experienced quarterback right next to you, that is a different story. And what makes this even more interesting is that, even with Kyler viewed as the favorite, the job is not locked in. That completely changes the environment, because this is not a situation where someone walks in as the unquestioned starter. There is real competition. There is room for surprise. And that makes every practice heavier. It also reveals something important. The Vikings are not putting everything into one path. They are opening possibilities, but that comes at a cost. If no one clearly separates, you enter the season with uncertainty. And teams with uncertainty at quarterback rarely go far. That's the part that should make you lean in, because this is not just about who looks better in May or June. It is about who can carry the offense when the season gets tight. Now, if one of them breaks out in this process, everything changes quickly. And the next voice in this conversation is not just another analyst. It is the perspective of someone who built a legacy inside this franchise on this entire situation. And now, when we talk about quarterbacks in Minnesota, the conversation takes on another level, because it is not just internal analysis, not just coaching staff. When a franchise legend speaks, people listen differently. And that is exactly what happened. In recent days, someone who truly understands what it means to wear this uniform decided to speak on the entire offensive situation. And it was not a light comment. It was direct, straight to the point, focused on what truly defines success or failure on the field. The voice behind it was Randy Moss. And the point he made is simple, but heavy. At the end of the day, everything comes down to the quarterback. When a team succeeds, it usually starts there. When it fails, it almost always leads back to that same position. And when you look at the recent history of the Vikings, it is easy to understand where that concern comes from, because the original plan did not work as expected. The young quarterback brought in with expectations could not deliver consistency. There were flashes, but nothing sustained, and that forced the team to act. That is where Kyler Murray enters the picture, a player once seen as the future of the league. Elite natural talent, but his career hit a slowdown. Injuries, inconsistency, questionable decisions, all of it played a role. And now he arrives in Minnesota in a very specific situation. He is not just here to play, he is here to prove something. And in the NFL, that changes everything about how a player shows up. Because when someone feels like they need to rebuild their career, they either elevate their level or fade out completely. And Moss made it clear he sees opportunity in that. He believes this environment can bring back the best version of that quarterback, especially with the kind of talent around him. Elite receivers, a creative offensive system, a strong structure. That's the kind of setup a veteran quarterback can't afford to waste. But it is not automatic. It never is. Because on the other side, there is still pressure. There is competition. There is a young quarterback who is not going to give up his spot without a fight. And that creates a very specific scenario. No one is comfortable. And honestly, that might be exactly what this offense needed, because sometimes when everyone feels pressure, the level rises, but it can also go the other way. And when things go wrong at quarterback, the impact hits fast and hard. That's why this quarterback room isn't just a camp storyline. It is the heartbeat of the whole season. Now put all of this together. Possible addition on offense, a player fighting to stay on the roster, uncertainty in the defense, a heated internal battle. This is not just a normal offseason, this is a defining moment. So look at the situation right now. This is not just one small adjustment after another. This is an offense that could add a key piece. This is a player fighting to hold his spot. This is a legendary leader who has not decided his future yet. And right in the middle of all that, a battle that could redefine who leads this team on the field. This is not a simple adjustment. This is identity being put to the test. And I will tell you this. Moments like this separate average teams from the ones that actually turn the corner. Now I want to hear from you. What do you like so far? What feels risky? And what concerns you the most about this entire situation? Drop it in the comments. Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings, let's go.